It's true that the press in general is going through difficult times. I'd say transformation, adaptation to new technologies. We've discussed these issues in the meetings of the different editions of New City in the world that we hold every 2 years. In 2019, knowing that our strength lies in being truly international, and given that we're in almost every country in the world and in agreement with the centre of the movement, we began a process of discernment, accompanied by Consulus, a consultancy firm in Singapore which has a global outreach. We started from all that Chiara has said at different times to the New City magazines. Unity as a sign of the times. And right now, when a big dose of fraternity is really needed in the world, there are many powerful means of communication available. It's time to speak from the rooftops, to give voice to the culture that springs from the charism of unity. Now, the Global New City project has come into existence, and we can summarize it in these objectives.
Renew the New City network, creating a network that will give visibility to the Focolare communities throughout the world, in view of a more united world.
Building a global network, we want to strengthen our media presence at an international level, networking among the New City groups and with various cultural agencies in different parts of the world.
To create a communication platform, a website and an international magazine, especially for leaders in politics, economics, civil society, and dialogue at all levels.
Create Nuova Global Foundation. Create a foundation that acts as a tool for fundraising in support of the various development of the new communication platform.
What can we all do? Find out more about New City in our own area, and keep up a constant dialogue with the editorial staff, helping them to improve and to spread the magazine.
Dear friends, partners and supporters for a united world, good morning, good afternoon and good evening to all of you from around the world. A warm ciao from Castel Gandolfo and to the historic moment at the opening of Nuova Global Foundation, our first ever signature event, the Unity Conference 2021. My name is Stanislav Lencz, and I serve as the Global Director for this incredible project, working with a global team present all over the world. How did all this project came about? UNESCO Prize for Peace Education winner, Chiara Lubich, dedicated her life to spreading the message of love, fraternity and hope to people of all ages, cultures and beliefs. In 1959, she founded Città Nuova, meaning New City, magazine in Italy, with a vision of building unity through media. Soon over the years, local editions of this Città Nuova were set up by local communities of the Focolare movement. These local editions sprang up in over 42 countries across 5 continents, with 21 magazines and 12 publishing houses. However, in the past decade, it has become increasingly challenging for good media companies to be sustainable. Likewise, these magazines and publishing houses, which generated good content, needed to adopt a new operational model. 2 years ago, a process began to restructure the network to ensure that it can remain independent, well-resourced, and achieve greater impact for a united world. Now, let us have a quick look at a journey which led to Nuova Global Project and to this foundation.
In a world scarred by the pandemic, with complex crises affecting our economy and planet, we are a connected generation in so many ways. Yet, this is the most divisive of times. In 1959, UNESCO Peace Prize winner Chiara Lubich founded Città Nuova, or New City, with a vision for a new form of media. Since then, 36 Città Nuova magazine and publishing houses have been established across the world. In the complex and challenging media environment, it was time for Città Nuovas to innovate once more for greater impact. 2 years ago, a process began to review and propose a new and innovative model for impact. Inspired by the call of Chiara Lubich to boldly change the world, Città Nuova magazine wants to be a path to fraternity, a tool for dialogue at all events, for fellowship, for unity. Known as Nuova Global Initiative, it involves 4 aspects: strengthening Città Nuovas, building one global network, creating a new media platform for global leaders, establishing a global foundation. First, strengthening Città Nuovas. Each local Città Nuova has created unique networks and communities. Each brings a unique perspective for a united world. Second, building one global network. To amplify their impact, a global network has been established to share resources, know-how, and strengthen effectiveness. Third, creating a new media platform for global leaders. A global media platform will be launched to support leaders in economy, politics, and civil society through research focusing on applicable solutions for a more united world. Fourth, establishing a global foundation. A global foundation will be set up to fundraise for the development of media towards shaping a more united world and to track this impact globally. This plan will take 5 years, with Consulas serving as a global partner with the entire network of Città Nuovas, to launch the Nuova Global Initiative, the Nuova Global Foundation, and Nuova Global Media. How can you help? First, support the Città Nuova in your country. Second, share this with someone who will support media for a united world.
This year marked the 25th anniversary since Chiara Lubich received the UNESCO Peace Prize for Education. Nuova Global Foundation is being launched to support 21 Città Nuovas, also known as our local affiliates, to have a global fundraising platform and coordinate global projects to build unity through media and peace education. Here is a brief look at the entire network of Città Nuovas, of Nuova Global. Our theme today is Innovate New Ways for Inclusion in a Divided World. This Unity Conference is part of our global strategy to influence public opinion through the use of data and stories to support the effort of individuals and organizations who believe to building a united world. Here is the view of our theory of change at Nuova Global. At the foundational level, we coordinate with local Città Nuovas globally on the production of thought leadership content in the form of research, narratives, to influence a united world. We have 4 pillars of focus, from economy, through politics, religion, to education. Our chairman, Federico, will explain this further. Later in this conference, you will hear about the Inclusive Economy Report. It is part of a multi-year project we started to use data and stories to track the progress of the world toward a more inclusive economy. Prior to this, we launched a global survey to ask the readers of Città Nuovas all over the world for their thoughts. We will share the results today. We will also listen to leaders and change makers in different fields, from climate change, women empowerment, to economic inclusion. We intend to continue to look out for a global class of leaders and change makers for the united world. Then you will hear about the global campaign for unity, which you and your organizations can participate in. In summary, through the network of magazines and publishing houses, we would like to influence a new global culture for unity, reconciliation, and dialogue. So we want present data, global indexes, and statistics on how a united world can be achieved, one step at a time. We want to feature personalities and individuals who bring about a united world. Then find evidence of design and content that contributes to a more united world. Also show how popular trends are emerging in the culture of it. Then find technology and applications that help to nurture a united world, and highlight how the entire planet is impacted by actions of unity. You can be part of this effort. We invite you to join us, to help us, and even volunteer with us. I am truly excited about this conference. And now please let me introduce Federico Vescovini, the chairman of Nuova Global Foundation. Himself a successful Italian entrepreneur for more than 20 years in the automotive space. Federico.
Good day to everyone. As a chairman of Nuova Global Foundation, I like to welcome all of you. I feel that it is in my responsibility to present a clear and honest reality, so that this conference is not mere words, but action, concrete and real action for a united world. The major challenge for any media organization today is to combine sustainability with positive impact instead of bowing merely to commercial interest, which many do. To address this issue, it was clear that we needed to implement proper fundraising and financing, also to attract and pay professionals to do a better job at impacting a united world. We believe that through a well-organized global foundation, we can reach this objective. As always, fundraising has to be transparent about the impact that we seek to create. For example, we want to use our media group to increase consciousness about the environmental challenges in Latin America and its divisive effect on communities, or about raising Africa, where there are new social innovators and entrepreneurs who are working to contribute to peace and unity. So we aim to raise funds globally for the local Città Nuovas, also known as a local affiliates of Nuova Global, and only award these funds based on project of impact. Every project will be evaluated properly to see that they are well planned and also measurable in terms of outcomes towards unity. This professional approach will also help these Città Nuovas become sustainable. In this way, we can support them with capability building for manpower, put in place proper fund management, and measuring the global impact of our work in the media. We foresee that in order to achieve this, we need to be able to raise $10 million per year. This budget, in comparison with other global media platforms, is bold, but we can manage with such a modest budget. Till date, we have not received any funds, but you can help us to impact the united world. In this professional fundraising approach, we can believe that it will also be easier for donors, UN agency, corporations, who share our goals to partner and finance us, as there will be a way to track impact and effects. Such an approach will also allow for a coordinated global publishing and editorial strategy, leveraging the strengths of so many varied local and regional presence through the 37 local magazines and publishing houses. This is also the first time we are able to coordinate their impact globally, so it will help to amplify their presence. In the Nuova Global Foundation website, you can read about the profiles of each of these città nuovas. What we seek to do is to build a networked global media channel which uses the existing new cities as the grassroots layer. In my view, this channel is the future, as it will be financed by a movement of people, groups, and individuals who believe in the united world and recognize themselves in the vision for a united world expressed by Chiara in her speech at UNESCO, which later on the president of Focolare, Margaret, will explain in better. Just as Chiara invested the money of the UNESCO Peace Prize for the construction of a town for unity in the Philippines called Peace, that over the years has generated a fruitful space for interreligious dialogue in Asia. So we want to realize together a new model of global media based on universal fraternity. So I saw that this project of Nuova Global is ambitious because of the founder. Chiara was always ambitious for unity. Our ambition needs to match the evil that we confront, but with the style that animated Chiara, which is undeniably courage, inclusiveness combined with a spirit of gratuitousness and service for the benefit of the common good. This pandemic has also pushed us to seriously consider new paradigms for each of these four pillars, to help and positively influence leaders who do want to impact the world for good and fraternity. The following is our editorial method for a united world. In economics, our goal is to present plausible ideas and a growing body of evidence that an economy based on inclusiveness, fraternity, and planet is not only essential, it can work. In politics, our goal is to present stories and examples of people in politics going to the extra mile to build a united world and to measure the impact of discord in politics that harms our collective good. In religions, our goal is to present the innovative progress of religions coming together for the common good, and to present a growing base of evidence of religion at the service of humanity. Finally, in education, our aim is to show how an inclusive form of education, one that respects diversity, is beneficial for humans and sustainable development. With these four pillars, in which the current città nuovas already have in-depth experiences, we like also to encourage young generation to join us. They have lost much hope during this pandemic. Nuova Global as a project can prove that it is possible to dream and act for a united world, triggering a contagious process and activists for peace and fraternity. Only in this way, we are ready to attract many other people, organizations, leaders, and even entire governments to join us in all possible efforts in making the world a better, more inclusive and dignifying place for everyone. Thank you. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Margaret Karram, the president of Focolare movement, to share her keynote speech. Margaret, please.
Dear everyone, I'm very happy to be here for the official launch of the Nuova Global Foundation. I would like to thank Federico Vescovini, Chairman of Nuova Global, and Stanislav Lencz, Global Director. I also would like to greet all the participants who have gathered here in this hall and those who are following online from all over the world. Your presence shows that you believe that a more peaceful and united world is possible. As president of the Focolare movement, I think it is very important to focus closely on how Chiara Lubich saw the world. She entrusted the dream of a united world to all those who want to live the charism of unity, a world made up of peoples who feel like brothers and sisters. She always encouraged commitment in the field of communication. She saw the media as a wonderful phenomenon of the present day, emphasizing its close link with the movement's purpose. Chiara often asked herself, if the movement wants to contribute to fulfillment of universal fraternity, what is the role of the media? Her conviction was the collective vocation of all aspects of the media is obvious. It is to help people live together in harmony. When Città Nuova, I think now you know what it means, in English means new city, began in 1950s, its purpose was to enable the people who had taken part in the Focolare's annual summer meeting, or Mariapolis, in the Dolomites in northern Italy, to remain in contact with one another. The name Mariapolis means City of Mary. Città Nuova was a means of sharing information, but it also allowed people to network and to keep relationships alive, even if they were physically distant from each other. It helped them to continue the sharing that had started at the Mariapolis and to continue to live the charism of unity together. Città Nuova grew and spread to various countries. Then came magazines and publishing groups that today produce periodicals, books, and podcasts that offer platforms and services, moving from paper to digital to the web. The name Città Nuova, for those who do not know its origin, might bring to mind a publication about urban planning or architecture. In reality, it is not wrong to think that Città Nuova is the vehicle for an urban project, not about physical architecture, but certainly concerning a new type of city where, as in the Dolomites, mutual love among people gives life to networks of fraternity in all areas of social and civil life. What does Città Nuova say today, and how can we look to the future with this further development of Città Nuova Global? I would like to emphasize three aspects in particular. First, the vision. The invitation to look for the positive has always characterized Città Nuova's style of communication, a style in which the good is always brought to light, even if it is hidden, even where divisions seem to prevail. What unites is of value. Certainly, in these times, the difficulties are enormous. The pandemic, the geopolitical crisis. However, precisely for this reason, new eyes are needed, even more so in the media, that allow us to seize opportunities, means, and instruments to continue contributing to unity among individuals and among peoples. Tools that unite, that indicate ways to build fragments of fraternity. This outlook is already at the heart of the work of journalists and communicators at Città Nuova, and from now on, with Nuova Global, it can only expand. and be enriched by the ever closer collaboration of Città Nuova in different areas in the world. Second, space for dialogue. The pages of a newspaper, a book, or a website can become open and inclusive spaces, opportunities for encounters between peoples, cultures, and visions of the world that are different and even opposing, but that never cease to seek ways of comparison and dialogue on the path towards fraternity. Now, with the foundation of Nuova Global and its planetary dimension, this mission is enriched with new partners and new cultural spaces. Third, increasing collaboration. Since the beginning of the various editions of Città Nuova, we have worked with a wide variety of organizations, bodies, and associations, many of which are here today, to advance the goal of a united world. But we must continue to work together to unite our human, cultural, and economic resources with those who in every part of the world share the same goals. I am happy to know that through Nuova Global, the network of the 31 editorial groups of Città Nuova, present from Latin America to Asia, is being expanded. This network already exists and includes many people who do not belong to the Focolare movement, but who share its values and aims. Certainly, we need huge resources, as we heard, to support all the editions of Città Nuova through the Nuova Global Foundation. And I would like really today to thank those who are helping us in 1,000 ways. The fact that different Città Nuovas have been able to survive the pandemic is an impressive and encouraging fact. We know that this was possible thanks to employees, collaborators, partners, and supporters who did not give up, but continued to believe in the work of these publishing groups and in their mission. I would like to conclude with Chiara Lubich, who in the year 2000 addressed an audience of media workers here at Castel Gandolfo. I quote, "I would like to raise a prayer of thanksgiving to God for the way He is present even in modern discoveries and in new technologies, and for the way He guides history. At this very moment, humanity seems to be wandering in the dark after the collapse of powerful ideologies and the obscuring of so many values. And yet, at the same time, there is such a great yearning for a more united world and a call for universal fraternity. At this very moment, we find ourselves equipped with these powerful means of communication, which are a sign of the times that says unity. Can't we see the hand of God in all of this? I thank you again for inviting me to this important event. Let us do together everything we can so that also through the Nuova Global Foundation, we can spread this vision of communication and so that we can contribute ever more towards a united world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Margaret, for your words, for being with us, and for anchoring this event and the entire Nuova Global to its roots and to the vision of Chiara Lubich, the founder of Focolare movement. Now, let me introduce the first session on the Unity Conference and to hand over the word to Susanne.
Hi, my name is Susanne Jensen. I'm the editor-in-chief of Living City, the United States. We started this journey for the Inclusive Economy Report to get a gauge of the current state of economic inclusion and level of inclusive growth across the globe. to see how serious this issue is, and also to see which areas are the most critical ones. The goal is to understand the different regions of the world better, and also to understand the difference among developed nations, among developed and developing countries in a more insightful way, so we can develop better policy proposals to tackle these unsustainable and destabilizing differences. Here are the most important insights of the report. Less than 50% of people receive equitable access or inclusion to the 5 measured aspects of economic inclusion and drivers of inclusive growth. This is an insufficient ratio, and while this may not be surprising, it is a very important fact to keep in mind. This is the base where we are now and from where we have to start. The issue of inequality has been here with us for quite some time. The data has highlighted it for a long time, and there have been serious efforts to better the situation. Yet inequality continues to burden the 21st century. So our question is, how should we shape solutions for a better impact? What was even more surprising for us in these data was to find that the G7 nations, the most advanced economies, didn't perform all that better than developed countries as a whole, even though they were supposed to be the leading economies of the developed world. It arose the question whether the assumption that the higher the level of development or advancement of an economy brings with itself automatically a higher level of inclusion. The report's finding is that inclusion, access to the benefits of development, cannot be expected automatically as a trickle-down effect, so to say, but it has to be part of the design. It has to be part of the policy principles that are being developed. Reka, you are an economist, former ambassador of Hungary in the United States, and a board member of Nuova Global. What can be done if we cannot assume that the free market economic system will automatically bring about inclusion? Can it somehow be designed in?
Susanna, thank you so much for inviting me to this discussion, and congratulations for Nuova Global and for the report that was produced. I'm very glad to be part of this discussion, and I'm very excited and thrilled about the topics that are being covered by the report. This report really raises a number of very important and thought-provoking insights and gives us a great set of intellectual as well as policy tools for the entire international community to refocus on this really fundamental question. Is access to the benefits of development in our societies automatic, or do they need additional policy tools to be ensured? Just for the sake of accuracy, I do have a PhD in economic history and have worked extensively on energy issues, but I've always worked on the strategic aspect of these challenges. So I'm not an economist, but the great way to see my background is to call me a strategist studying international affairs. But I think this gives us a good enough background to discuss the report. So the question of the report that is raised by the report is one that will be defining for the 21st century. Many economists and development experts around the world tend to agree now that development is possible in a sustainable way. Newer and newer proposals are being published on how, for instance, even climate change can be turned from pressure to an inspiring new challenge. But there's much smaller focus on how to ensure in all of these that access to the benefits of the development become open to all. So it is of great interest to develop policy proposals that can be implemented in any country that promote or create a focused effort for this. So having said this, and especially today after a year and a half of the pandemic and this sense of urgency and interconnectedness that was created by this, it is a priority now to consider how to shape the post-globalization and the post-pandemic era. It is a very important challenge for us to note that people around the world seem to express similar reactions when it comes to the negative effects of extreme globalization, for example, that has been highlighted by the report. In my view, decision makers and thought leaders are today challenged to design new and sustainable methods of national, regional, and truly international collaboration with a clear goal for the betterment of the lives of people and countries and of our planet as a common value for all.
Reka, you mentioned our planet. In the light of the effects of climate change, which we are already experiencing, what could be a road to collective actions to drive real change?
Yes, indeed. We need to measure such outcomes to be able to show tangibly how such collaborations are bringing real change and impact for communities and for countries. Eventually, the mission of this conference and of Nova Global is such to raise awareness, shape national and international thinking with a view of the whole. Without understanding the interconnectedness of our world, no long-term solutions can be worked out. Do we want to achieve peace in our country? We cannot ensure this without thinking beyond the borders of our country. Just as an example, there are many signs of a renewed effort for cooperation, despite the still existing conflicts and tensions in the world that shouldn't be underestimated for sure. But it is a very thought-provoking message, for example, in Chiara Lubich's UNESCO Peace Education Prize acceptance speech, that after the fact that many of efforts that aimed at resolving the world's problems in a global manner collapsed, there are multiple new efforts led by desires that are based on the understanding of the oneness, on the unity of the world. This thought comes up in several ways in discussions with her discussions with political leaders, in various speeches to UN, EU, and so on. But choosing community and cooperation from this perspective does not have to be in contradiction to particular interests, national values, or even the profit sense of business, but it is a precondition for developing sustainable policies. I find it of great importance. Choosing humanity, adding to people's sense of national belonging in every country is key for the 21st century's challenges. There's not one challenge ahead of us in the 21st century that can be solved by lesser cooperation. If anything, every single challenge ahead of us requires more cooperation. What is important is that it is a cooperation of the nations too, in order to achieve sustainable solutions for development and even for peace. National identity will not be less important for the 21st century. If anything, it will be more important. But a strong cooperation of the nations is going to be key, and it will have to be clearly defined. National heritage, belonging, and interest will increasingly have to include the ability and the interest to cooperate. Otherwise, it will only too easily lead to an increase in conflicts in the international arena. So it is of great importance to develop new forms and ways to measure and show how cooperation makes all participants more resilient and more successful, create more access to the common benefits. This is why it is a very welcome message to me that a key outcome of this inclusive economy report of Nova Global is to launch a new methodological index to measure the positive effects of cooperation for shaping a better functioning economy, better functioning communities, altogether a planet that is better for all its inhabitants, if you might want to say a better planet. Okay, so one thing that came to my mind is that this report calls this the United World Score. This is an interesting and thought-provoking tool, I have to tell you, from a professional point of view, to help track impact on peoples and communities through measuring three elements. First, the level of shared capability development for peoples and communities, the level of shared R&D towards innovation for common good, and the level of shared opportunities for growth and interdependence.
Thanks, Reka. If we manage to get that method done in 2022, it will be useful as a tool to help policymakers and businesses assess their contribution to global unity and resilience. Now, in the Inclusive Economy Report, there are other interesting findings, and I'd like to discuss them with you. Overall, on a global scale, across the 5 dimensions measured, the survey results reflected that the biggest area of the gap in terms of economic inclusion relates to equal access to job or employment opportunities, with only 20.2% of respondents agreeing that this is achieved in their country of residence. Whereas the area perceived to have the smallest gap relates to adequate inclusion in civic participation, with 38.1% of respondents voting in agreement. The area of civic participation is also the only area where less than 50% of the respondents disagreed that it was being achieved. Another surprising finding is that the wealthiest nations, the G7, got the worst results in terms of equal access to job opportunities. Reka, can you tell us what you found to be of particular interest to you in our report?
Oh, many things. But probably the issue itself of shaping an inclusive economy. It is certainly a very complex and multifaceted issue, but certainly one that merits serious discussion from many aspects. The report shows, for example, as I read it, that when looking at developing countries, the most significant gap, developing countries we're talking about, the most significant gap was measured in public access to quality healthcare and housing, with 90.4% disagreeing that this was being achieved. While the area perceived to have the smallest gap was inclusion in civic participation, with 16.9% in agreement. So while this could be expected in some ways, with governments in many developing countries being poorly resourced, in this context, it highlights a strong potential. In countries where civic participation is accessible for almost all, as we see this strong, the good numbers, the chances of narrowing the gap, for example, the gap of access to healthcare, are significantly greater. So this obviously requires different policy tools than the situation in countries where civic participation in itself is inaccessible for a majority of the population. Then I also found of interest to see some regional differences that the report highlights. In Europe, for instance, the report shows that the area found to have the biggest gap of accessibility was the access to jobs or employment, with 43.4% disagreeing that this was being achieved. The area perceived to have the smallest gap was in access to quality education, with 55% in agreement. In contrast, I found it fascinating as an international relations expert and a person who's focusing, not an Asia expert, obviously, but still I found it of giving real insight in the report that it highlights that in Asia, the area that was surveyed to have the biggest gap was in access to quality healthcare and housing, with 83.3% disagreeing, and this was achieved. Whereas the area perceived to have the smallest gap was in inclusion in civic participation, with 55.6% in agreement. In North America, the area surveyed to have the biggest gap was in access to quality healthcare and housing, with 74.6% disagreeing that this was being achieved. Whereas the area perceived to have the smallest gap was in inclusion in civic participation, with 32.4% in agreement. Or South America, as a comparison also, the area that was surveyed to have the biggest gap was in access to quality healthcare and housing, with 93.9% disagreeing that this was being achieved, where the area perceived to have the smallest gap was in inclusion in civic participation, with 13.3% in agreement. So obviously, like I said, I'm no expert in Asia or South America, but as a European, I found it, and as an international relations expert, and I found it surprising really to see that access to jobs was still such a high problem. With all the developments of cooperation in the framework of the European Union designed for this and functioning on this logic. Also, an interesting and important thing that is highlighted by these survey results that I found for international relations experts and decision makers, and international organizations as well, and even strategists like myself, is to focus on sources of instability and conflict. The problem of economic equality and inclusive growth is prevalent throughout the world. Compared to its importance for the average voter, the people as of today, it stands out as a critically unaddressed issue, I believe. Many of these issues in the report are issues that experts and international organizations have been following for decades, really. I remember, my studies, and from the early 90s, reports from the 70s, it's not a new issue. But they are issues, which is a real warning. If they have been on for several decades, and the question is ahead of us still, really have to ask ourselves as experts and as civil, participants in our societies, what can be done to make a difference? Political decision makers have a role in this, for sure, but not only they. These crises need the focus and action of multiple stakeholders, down to the average voter. The greatest challenge and our responsibility, thus, as I see after having read the report, is really to reach out, to develop a cooperation among the different stakeholders, and to start now to shape an inclusive economy. To borrow another phrase from Chiara Lubich, who termed it the culture of giving. This sense of a greater planetary family is expressed also in the analysis of interconnectedness that we saw throughout the pandemic, but also emerging in many phenomena in the world. It is a thought that is intriguing, it's inviting. And this is why the work of Nuova Global is so important, in my understanding. Out of concern for our world, we all follow the bad news. But out of the same concern, it is also worth looking at the good news, look at the best practices that have worked actually in real situations. It is a way to uncover many unsung heroes who are working daily to build an inclusive economy, which I find, fascinating and impressive and inspiring. But it's also a very important way to solve problems, to hack the problems in a positive sense. And on this basis, to develop a new design, develop policy proposals that will lead us not just to solving one problem, but also to creating the international dynamics for sustainable solutions by design. So I think the report highlights it rightly that there has to be a design for this. But this is a mission of Nuova Global that I think is well worth getting engaged in and certainly very well worth supporting.
Thanks, Rika, what you have shared, which is so important. It's time for positive solutions and not the obvious bad news. So with this, we like to conclude the session. We will be ready to launch the Inclusive Economy Report in different countries in the first quarter of 2022. We are now seeking sponsors for the print versions and to help us promote the ideas in this report to influence policymakers and the business community. If you like to support this project or be part of it in any way, please contact us at info@nuovaglobal.org. Thank you, Rika.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you and congrats for Nuova Global for this wonderful event and for launching a work together. So it's really just fascinating. Congrats.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thank you so much, Reka, for this really deep and insightful dive into the Inclusive Economy Report. Now I'd like to invite you all to a 15 minutes break. Relax, take a coffee or tea, greet your loved ones, stretch, but be back, please, on time in 15 minutes as we start immediately with personal stories with the second session. Enjoy the break. Dear friends, welcome back. Now, please let me introduce Reverend Sugino, our board member, to moderate the next session on the human stories shared in the Nuova Global Inclusive Economy Report. Reverend Sugino, let me welcome you to this conference. We deeply appreciate your presence and your service.
Thank you so much, Brother Stano. Greetings from Tokyo, Japan. In the previous session, the Inclusive Economy report was presented, and it's based on data, research, and evidence. What supports such data, research, and evidence is a person and people who aspire to cultivate and practice the values and virtues of human dignity and shared well-being, and who dedicate their lives to innovate and concretize new models of economy and integral human development. For over 2 decades, I've had the privilege of working with religious leaders, faith-inspired business leaders, civil society organizations, as well as diplomatic communities in conflict situations across the globe. As we all know, war, poverty, and environmental degradation are all interlinked. And as the Inclusive Economy report envisions, the building of trust and nurturing unity in diversity must be the foundation for the advancement of integral human development. In my 23 years at Religions for Peace, I witnessed diverse religious communities re-emerging their spiritual, moral, and social assets to overcome divisions and co-build multi-religious mechanisms for action, common action for peace. In the midst of brutal civil war in Sierra Leone, Christians and Muslim leaders co-built the Interreligious Council of Sierra Leone as a mechanism to overcome divides and work towards to end the war. The Interreligious Council of Sierra Leone was trusted by all parties, including the president of the country, the rebel group, and diplomatic communities as well, and served as a mediator in the peace process in Lomé, Togo. There was an important story of Christian and Muslim women of faith taking their courageous action to enter the rebel territory, to meet with the rebel leader, and successfully negotiated the release of over 50 child hostages. The Interreligious Council of Sierra Leone, an innovative, inclusive, and multi-religious civil society mechanism, has since responded to various national challenges, including HIV/AIDS, Ebola crisis, and currently COVID-19, in partnership with the United Nations and other key partners on the ground. This historic example and story demonstrate that once the trust among different communities is cultivated through such habit of collaboration, the country's multi-religious mechanism can address multiple challenges in a holistic manner, advancing human dignity and shared well-being. The virtues are habitual orientations to values, cultivating virtues of dialogue and collaboration, building inclusive models of human interactions in economics, politics, and inter-ethnic and inter-religious relations are at the heart of the mission of Nuova Global Foundation. Today, dear friends, we are blessed with 2 remarkable women leaders who dedicate their lives to bridging the divide and developing inclusive economic models. Allow me to invite our first speaker, Ms. Yemi Kerry from Nigeria. Ms. Yemi Kerry is the Chief Executive Officer of Hekabela Limited, a technology business transformation company. Ms. Yemi is the co-founder of Rising Tide Africa, women's movement initiated with a vision to increase women's participation in investing and promote education and investor mentoring across Africa. Ms. Yemi, permit me to ask, from your own experience, what do you think are key elements of inclusive economy and concrete ways to achieve such inclusive and integral human development?
Thank you, Erin, for having me here today. For me, when we're looking at inclusive economy, we tend to say something like leave no one behind. Leave no one behind, whether it's by your color, your race, your culture, your values, your age, your disability, background, whatever it is essential that there's a free and fair access to the economies of the world. And as such, I would just say, just give you a frame of what is happening globally and on the continent of Africa, around not leaving any woman behind. What we have culturally known over the years is that women are directly related to homemaking and child rearing for our ancestors and our generations far long. Over the last century and a couple of decades, however, women have begun to rise and want their voices to be heard. They have shown their skills in different ways. In organizations, becoming forebearers of very different industries, advocacy, politics, and all of that is beginning to happen on the continent. And the unique thing about this is that for the inclusive economy, there are different compartments of people that see things in different ways. So, for instance, we have those that, like the Boardroom Africa, it is Pan-African, and it was officially launched in 2016. And what they do is have a network of female executives in Africa, and they start to promote them so that they, and showcase their emotional talents and their exceptional talents. On the continent, in Nigeria, we have different groups. Now, we are also jumping onto the inclusion train. It is becoming obvious that not only are we canvassing for women to be on boards, we are canvassing for women to have a lifestyle. So there's a Gaia Women's Club, a business club, a social club for women to come and let their hair down. There's a Whisker, which is for successful women in careers. There's WIMBIS, which is women in management, business, and public service. However, what my story started with was that I became introduced into the ecosystem of investing. And while I was still doing my rounds, I used to go for pitches, and I noticed that there were always men pitching. And even if a woman comes up there, she's not showcasing her goods or services properly. And so one of those days I was in the room, one of the few women, I think we were about 3 women in a group of about 40 men. And this lady came in and had such a good product. And in having that product, she couldn't deliver. And I knew she had something. So I excused myself and I told them that she should give me some time with her and we will bring her back the next month, because these were monthly meetings. And surely, we, 2 of us took her and coached her and, trained her about how to express yourself, the level of confidence you need to exhibit in front of investors. And surely when we brought her back, everybody wanted to invest. So I noticed that, look, there's something here. I could be doing this on the side. By the way, I run a technology company. So I could be doing this on the side while we continuously breed female entrepreneurs. And so it started off rising tide. And slowly but surely, we are now 68 members. We not only mentor and train and educate, but we take these young entrepreneurs and we invest our time and our capital on them. So we are a group of angel investors. So it metamorphosized into angel investing. And we are a group of angel investors, and we run by 4 pillars. One of the pillars is that of education. And for us in education, we are educating the investors and the female entrepreneurs. Why are we doing this? Because a lot of the women do not understand the concept of angel investing. But we at Rising Tide are trying to ensure that we're galvanizing enough women to become angel investors so that they can start seeing this as another asset class, apart from your financial instruments, real estate, jewelry, and see that, there is an opportunity to not only grow yourself and develop yourself, but you will be impacting on female entrepreneurs on the continent. So that is one of our pillars. The second part of our education has to do with the entrepreneurs. So we do a lot of education and training. Now we have created a curriculum because we understand, we began to see that there's certain elements of a business that need to be in place and that these female entrepreneurs need to understand. And so we have the curriculum that allows for them to, after going through about 6 weeks, they have their blueprint for their businesses. So we do a lot of education. We also then do mentoring in 3 areas. The first one is, any and everybody. So we do a mentoring clinic. The second one is that we do mentoring for the people, the startups that we invest in. And then the third one is that we have a strategy session and do group investments. Why do we do this? Because we need to not only make sure that we are investing in these entrepreneurs, but to ensure that they are stable over a period of time. And it's just not that we're throwing in money, but we are developing them slowly but surely. The fourth pillar has to do with networking, is to canvas, to create opportunities, to create panel sessions, to create pitch sessions, to ensure that we create awareness about these entrepreneurs on the continent. I'm just proud to say that today we have invested over $1.5 million. We started off in 2018, and this year alone we have done $748,000. And we have invested in 23 startups portfolios. But the pride of it is that we are, in our own little way, a day at a time, closing out the gender gap and gender funding gap, and ensuring that we are creating a free and fair a platform for the female entrepreneurs. And that's my story.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jamie. Obviously, we all know that you're a successful businesswoman, and you are helping to further strengthen diversity and inclusion in business leadership in Africa. So all concrete and innovative examples you shared today, including the Boardroom Africa, Gaia Women Club, Women Management, Business and Public Services, and most importantly, your founding of Rising Tide Africa are important cases and stories to guide our efforts to develop new inclusive models of economy. So thank you so much for your sharing. Allow me to turn quickly to our second speaker, Ms. Elizabeth Wallen. Ms. Elizabeth is founder of Project DIA, managing director of Groundwork Indy. She is focused on the redistribution of resources and elevating the voices of those directly impacted by societal inequalities. She has spent most of her career developing a community-based program for women impacted by the justice system, providing them with job training, mentorship opportunities, support services. Now at Groundwork Indy, Elizabeth continues to bring together individuals of diverse backgrounds and cultures to build resilient, inclusive, and equitable communities. Ms. Rilves, permit me to ask the same question as I posed for Ms. Yemi. From your own experience, what do you think are key elements of inclusive economy and concrete ways to achieve a resilient and inclusive economy and integral human development?
Thank you, Reverend, and thank you everyone for having me here today. It's such an important conversation, and there are a lot of key elements of an inclusive economy that I can then talk about that sometimes are more data-driven. But what I'd like to talk about today are some of the more challenging indicators of an inclusive economy and character of an inclusive economy, which are sometimes the more emotional side of life. So today I want to talk about this idea of losing, and I don't mean this in a competitive sense. I mean it more in the idea of allowing others to change us, which leads us to continually challenge our assumptions. So one story stands out to me regarding this. It was a few years ago when I was in the very, very beginning stages of starting Project Leah. And I had worked with a few women by that time. And I knew that in order for us to make the next leap and to grow, I would really have to retain staff that could be trained and take on more of the growing list of responsibilities that we were experiencing. So Kathy, she was referred to me by one of our partner organizations and had been going through a rough time around family relationships and housing, and had led to her involvement with our legal system, which I could go all into the systemic issues of the United States criminal justice system. But anyway, she was incredibly reliable, very, very talented and experienced worker. And she had brought many skills to the table. We, at Project Leah, we repurposed discarded materials into home furnishings and accessories. And Kathy was very creative, very artistic, had a lot of sewing skills. So she even developed some new products that we were selling. I started making plans to train Kathy and move her up within the organization. Over the next few months, Kathy reunited with her son. She confronted an unhealthy relationship. She got stable housing, and she started saving up money. So I was like, oh, this is wonderful. She started to take on more responsibility at work, and I was really excited for the way things were headed. So we hired more women into our program and really, really started to feel the momentum building. And in my head, I had these expectations that Kathy would, in a way, be the manager of new employees and take on the responsibilities of training and production. But one day, Kathy doesn't come to work. And I called her, and she told me she was moving out of town, moving out of the state. I would no longer be with us. It was very, very sudden, and I was left feeling very confused and abandoned and sad about this. And there was so much work that we had to do, right? We had just hired on 3 new participants into our program, and they needed onboarding and training, as well as some of the case management services we provide them. So I didn't hear from Kathy for a few months. I wasn't sure where she might be or even how she was doing, especially with the suddenness of her leaving. So a part of me worried about her safety even. But then one day I got a call from Kathy, and she apologized for the suddenness of her departure, but explained to me that it was what she needed to do at that time for various reasons. So Kathy had moved to Florida and found a place to live by the water, and which was something she was always dreamed of and had talked about, being in a warmer place. And this is something she had been empowered to do from being able to save money over the months that she was working with us and in stable housing. So she got a job she liked and was doing really well. And although my emotions of confusion and at times feeling betrayed by this situation, I look back on this experience and think this is one of the biggest successes we've had as an organization. To invite people into our space and empower them to follow their dreams. I realized I had made many assumptions and was creating an agenda for someone that did not consider what they might have wanted for themselves. And Kathy and I have since remained in touch with calls and letter writing and sometimes a surprise visit to Indianapolis. So it just, even through these experiences that challenge us sometimes emotionally in working towards an inclusive economy, it really goes to show that when we do build these relationships, that they are strong and they can withstand tension. So they're very flexible and can grow and evolve over time. And that are some of the key indicators, I believe, towards an inclusive economy.
Thank you so much for your really moving and inspirational stories. There was a profound wisdom in your sharing, the idea and the practice of losing. You have enlightened us by saying that to lose mean our willingness to allow others to change us and challenge our assumptions. Cultivating and practicing such virtue in your interactions with Kathy is the foundation for an inclusive and resilient economy and a society which respects human dignity and shared well-being. So thank you so much for your sharing. Unfortunately, the time for our session is quite limited and in fact over, but thank you both for sharing inspirational stories full of practical wisdom and innovation, which highlights the critical elements of inclusive economy. I hope that we continue our telling and sharing of stories through our Nuova Global Foundation so that we can continue to learn from each other and expand and further strengthen our common action for inclusive economy, shared well-being, and integral human development. Friends, please join me in thanking our remarkable panelists for who they are and what they do to help create a united world.
Thank you so much, dear Reverend Sugino, dear Yemi and Elizabeth, for inspiring us to bring about a change of inclusion, to be able to be winning and losing, losing and winning. In the next presentation, I would like to launch a global campaign for unity. This pandemic has seen the rise of content that sows division. One particular episode was shocking to all of us. In a scathing testimony by the whistleblower Frances Hogan in October this year, where she provided documents to US Congress that show Zuckerberg knew Facebook could have intervened to prevent the spread of hate speech and of misinformation in at-risk countries, but he did not. The reason? It would have negatively affected meaningful social interaction. A key metric Facebook uses to measure communication among families and friends. It is clear to us at Nuova Global that we need to be innovative to counter massive platforms of content such as Facebook in order to shape a united world, and that we cannot count on them to do good, as good is often against their interests of profit. Therefore, it is time to find a global network of organizations and individuals who are producing content that promotes unity, reconciliation, and dialogue. Now, as we know, we cannot do this alone. Nuova Global is too small to impact change alone. So through this award, we hope to have an opportunity to find allies around the world. With this, we are happy to introduce the Unity Mark Award. This award shall be given to individuals, organizations, and to media companies who have created either campaigns, online or print content, or newsletters that positively impact the united world in their localities or regions. We will have 5 judging criteria. First, creativity and originality of concept to bring about unity, dialogue, and reconciliation. Second, quality of editorial content for unity, for dialogue, and for reconciliation. Third, quality of the visual concept and design to inspire these 3 elements. Fourth, demonstrate sensitivity to the sentiments or context related to local identity and inclusion. And fifth, demonstrate with statistics the impact of your content for unity and reconciliation. We will launch the registration in January 2022. Submission deadline will be in March 2022. The shortlist interviews will be conducted online in May 2022. Then we will announce the winners in June 2022. We hope to invite some of the winners to share at the next Unity Conference 2022 in November. The global panel of judges will include the board members of Nuova Global Foundation, the editors of the affiliates in the network, and relevant persons of influence. So please, sign up if you have already something and do share this with others. This is the Unity Mark. Now, Candela, the word over to you.
Thank you, and welcome to this session on climate change and social inclusion. My name is Candela Copparoni. I'm a journalist and I work for the Italian Città Nuova magazine. Today is here with us Mr. Richard Tantocco, COO of EDC, Energy Development Corporation, the largest geothermal energy producer in the Philippines and the second largest in the world. His work is focused on the development of alternative energy projects. Welcome to this meeting. It is a pleasure for us to have you here with us. We are joined by Mr. Clemens Via, journalist, editor of Neue Stadt. Good afternoon. The theme of this meeting is, as I said, climate change and social inclusion. I will start with a question for Richard. What can you tell us about EDC's work? Why is it so relevant to switch to renewable energy projects?
Yeah, thank you, Candela. As we all know, our planet is in a climate crisis due to the excessive emissions of greenhouse gases, such as CO2 and methane. Almost all of these emissions are caused by human activities, and this has been established by over 270 scientists of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. As one human family, we need to work together to first contain and then reverse carbon emissions. And one of the best ways to do this is by shifting to renewable energy. The world's consumption of electricity today accounts for 27% of all greenhouse gases. And the shift to clean energy can be done because there is an abundant supply of solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal energy, and we have the technology to do it cost effectively already. I head the Energy Development Corporation, which is the largest clean energy company in the Philippines and also the top geothermal company in the world. We have solar, wind, hydro, and geothermal power facilities and are expanding with 4 new clean energy plants right now. I can confirm that clean energy can replace coal, the most polluting fossil fuel. As we transition to 100% clean energy, we need to temporarily, just temporarily, shift to using a fossil fuel that cuts the emissions of coal by 50%. And this is natural gas. This is what is known as the energy transition.
Throughout history, we know there have been natural disasters, but since the Industrial Revolution, and especially in the last 20 years, we are seeing how the weather events have become more intense. The impacts are also much more acute, causing major droughts, prolonged fires, floods, heavy storms, etc. To what extent is this due to human action, and what can we do to reverse these effects? Can you talk about climate justice?
Yeah, the climate is getting worse. We all know that 13 of the hottest years on record have occurred in the last 15 years. In the business that I operate, our insurance claims from natural catastrophes have gone up 24 times in the last 10 years compared to the prior 20-year average. That's 2,400% more damage. I see the impact on our employees, our communities, and on the destruction of our facilities. In terms of climate justice, what is at issue here is the fact that those that are contributing the most to climate change are not the ones who will most likely be affected by it. Those whose lifestyles generate the most carbon are the likely ones with the resources to build resilience in their lives. So the wealthy don't have a problem. Those who are not contributing to climate change, the poor, those in the fringes of society who have simple lives that are less likely to cause emissions, are the ones whose lives get devastated when hurricanes and droughts happen. I have met with people in our communities who have had to stop the schooling of their children, or even taking their life-saving medicines to put their little resources to repair the roof of their home that was blown off by a typhoon. This is climate injustice, and it has to stop.
In your case, you told us how important it is to maintain a constant dialogue with new generations, potential change makers for our world. Can you share with us some inspiring experiences of good practices that help to reduce pollution and slow down climate change?
We all need to engage the youth, for in them is our hope and our best ability to innovate. I spend a lot of time talking to the youth in school settings. I have spoken to many age groups from 10 years old to 30 years old, even across international borders. Last month, I taught a Master's in Business Administration class in Indonesia. In these 1 to 2 hour sessions, I lay down the importance of understanding the facts about climate change and why individual and societal action is needed. The youth ask me the same questions. Do we still have hope? And can one person really make an impact? So I tell the youth that it is important to begin changes as an individual. The greatest unit of change in society is the person whose heart and mind are troubled by a problem and is inspired to be courageous and spark a revolution. I also suggest that we stop buying things. So for example, every year, we in the planet produce 2 billion t-shirts that use up 1.4 trillion liters of water. I love making this example even if my children find it funny. But I personally continue to use t-shirts for sleeping that are 28 years old now. They are perfectly soft and easy to repair when they get a hole. Right? I also stress to the youth that it is important to consume less meat because 20% of greenhouse gases come from factory farming. I share that my wife, Victoria, who is a volunteer, and I shifted to a 100% plant-based diet last October 9. No meat, fish, eggs, milk, and butter. It was very difficult at the start, but now 8 weeks later, I feel healthier and full of energy. I think I'm on the path of healing my body after 55 years of abuse. So both for health and climate reasons, I have taken a stand, and it feels right and it feels just. And finally, Candela, I tell the youth that until the leaders of the world unite against climate change and effect important changes such as carbon taxation, every little change counts. Let me repeat that. Until there is united action by world leaders, every action counts.
Talking about consequences of climate change and also good practices and care for the environment, for life, for creation, this leads me to connect with Clement's contribution. Recently, in July, as we may all remember, Germany and Belgium suffered severe floods that caused death and high material losses. As part of your research work, you have been able to talk to direct witnesses who have experienced the tragedy firsthand. What was the situation like?
Well, if we look in the affected regions, people were surprised at the speed with which the water level of the rivers grows. People were shocked above all by the small streams that turned into raging torrents within a few hours, what they had never experienced in their entire lives. Many of them had lived in their homes for decades. Now they were destroyed from one night to the next. Houses that people had often built up themselves over years of work. Even more people had their cellars filled up. The water was up to the ground floor. Furniture, clothes, mementos to which people's hearts were attached. Photo albums that show their history, their wedding, the children growing up, the grandchildren. Everything was lost. Some photos we see here were published by Caritas International, who's very much involved in helping the victims of the flood. On a small river called Aar, most of the bridges were washed away. Entire sections of roads and railway tracks were torn away, as were electricity and gas lines. Insurance companies estimate the damage of the floods at between 10 and 20 billion US dollars. At least 184 people in Germany fell victim to the floods, and another 41 in neighboring Belgium. Many people were traumatized. Others lost all their possessions, but were glad to at least be alive. To this day, much of the damage has still not been repaired. There was a lot of despair, but there was also incredible solidarity. Other people were deeply touched when watching the news of the tragedy on television. So complete strangers traveled from distant regions of Germany to lend a hand to help. There was incredible willingness to donate, also from other countries, even poor ones in other continents. In villages where people only knew each other by sight, the common fate brought people together. People gave one another a helping hand, which created a new, stronger feeling of community that was giving many affected persons hope and consolation.
As social, the most vulnerable sectors of population are the most affected, having the least resources to adapt to new circumstances, and paradoxically, those who pollute the least, as Richard told us before. One fact we can underline is that during the year 2020, the number of migrants displaced due to natural disaster caused by climate change has increased to 30.7 million, surpassing the number of people displaced by war and violence, as emerged from the EDOS report on immigration 2021. So a change of route is essential. Turning to the case of Germany, What is the government doing to reverse this situation? In an article you wrote, you explained that there has been a reaction toward renewable energy. What kind of commitment are we talking about?
Well, by 2030, Germany wants to reduce its greenhouse gases by 65% compared to 1990. Its government is fostering the building of wind and solar power plants. In return, it has decided to close all its coal-fired power plants by 2038. Also by 2030, 65% of electricity consumption is to be covered by wind, sun, water, or biomass. Every year, the effect is to be reviewed and, if necessary, readjusted. At the beginning of this year, the government set a price for carbon dioxide. With this, it wants to create incentives to save energy and to increasingly use renewable energies. In return for the increase of the carbon dioxide price, poorer households are to be relieved by receiving more money for housing benefits, including heating costs. Anyway, environmentalists say the carbon dioxide price is still far too low. To encourage people to switch more quickly to electric vehicles, the government is paying up to 9,000 euro for the purchase of an electric car. There are government grants if people change their old oil heating system in their home. So the German government promotes ecological agriculture and sustainable forestry. It invests in the development of energy storage systems and hydrogen technology. All these measures are good steps, but we do not know when and to which extent they will have an impact on climate change. I doubt that the plans take into consideration that the demand for electricity will also increase more and more. What politicians don't dare is to ask citizens to use less energy, to travel less, to heat less, to use electrical appliances less, because this definitely is unpopular.
Inevitably, the closure of all infrastructures and activities will make many people unemployed. I ask you both, is it possible to relocate those people to new jobs? And if so, how?
A great question, Candela. I think it's possible to relocate or reinvent ourselves in a new economy. From clean energy to electric vehicles, to lithium-ion battery recycling, to nature-based solutions, this transition to a decarbonized economy is described as the greatest business opportunity in the last 100 years. It is estimated that on energy transition alone, $50 trillion of investments are required from now up to the year 2050. So individuals need to begin to upskill themselves for this fourth industrial revolution, with themes focused on clean energy, a decarbonized economy, and technology. If this is done, people can transition to new jobs. I have spoken to a general manager of a top oil company in the region who transitioned to clean energy. He reported that banks in his country no longer lend money for oil exploration and production. Seeing this shift, he decided already to move to a green company. So the workforce needs to move fast, to act now, and to learn these new clean technologies so that they possess the skills that match the future that is needed.
Yeah, I can add to what Richard said, that in Germany, a shift of the jobs from coal mining to renewable energies, that's also what German politicians are hoping for in the future. which would mean a big retraining for miners. The government has begun to establish 16 federal agencies in the coal fields. Billions of euro are to flow into the infrastructure, into the construction of kindergartens and schools. New roads and railway lines are to be built. Lakes and forests are to be created on the brown coal areas for recreation and tourism. And it is hoped that all these measures will create jobs. But we will see what the state funding program will really be able to achieve.
Thanks, Clemens. Let me end with this hopeful note. Many banks and investment funds, insurance companies, large engineering companies, and equipment manufacturers have all decided to say no to coal. They will not lend money, insure, design, and build equipment for the most polluting source of energy, which are coal-fired power plants. Large and small car manufacturers are also committed to 100% electric vehicles by the 2030s. So there's a lot of good happening already in this world. We just need more.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Clemens. As you both explained very well, tackling climate change, which is the crisis of our time, requires personal responsibility, a conscious decision-making that also includes sacrifices, renounces, and which in the end means exercising our own freedom, perhaps not doing what we like to do, but we consider to be the best thing to do. And I believe that one of the conclusions we can draw from this moment of encounter is that a change of route is possible, that a reinvention of the industry and economic system, which is already underway, is feasible, moving toward an increase in the use of renewable energies that allow for greater care for the environment and for people, and a healthier and more harmonious life. So we can close this session with a vision of hope and with an invitation to action, starting from oneself, from individual to social action for a sustainable and inclusive economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Candela, Richard, and Clemens for this sharing, not only for the insights, but also for your personal experiences. Now, let me introduce Jesus Moran, co-president of the Focolare movement, for his closing note on a humanistic vision for an inclusive economy. Jesus, please.
Prima di iniziare vorrei porgere un ringraziamento particolare a chi mi ha preceduto al microfono in questo evento organizzato dalla Nuova Global Foundation. Con competenza sono stati trattati i temi del mondo dei media, della trasmissione dell'eredità di un carisma, delle necessità e delle opportunità del dialogo. Mi hanno colpito anche le esperienze nei diversi settori dell'economia e dell'ecologia, come queste ultime. Rispetto a tutto questo, credo di farmi portavoce di tanti se esprimo la mia meraviglia. Mi rendo conto che probabilmente questa sensazione appare debole se compresa nel linguaggio quotidiano. Ma i greci ponevano la meraviglia, thaumas, a esperienza primordiale del conoscere e del comunicare la verità. Rapito nel vortice degli interessi, degli scambi, dei processi sociali, dove tutto pare avere una data di scadenza, dove ogni cosa sembra avere valore solo quando è utile, l'uomo di oggi è ancora capace di provare meraviglia quando scopre e mette in luce ciò che è. ciò che rimane, ciò che in modo autentico indica il valore al di là di ogni utilità. E allora consentitemi dire da filosofo che il mio augurio è che tra i fini della Nuova Global Foundation ci sia anche quello di essere una fonte inesauribile di meraviglia. Nuova Global Foundation, sì, una fondazione. Qualcuno ci piglierà per matti. In un mondo che tutti descrivono come liquido, noi ci mettiamo a fondare qualcosa. Nell'epoca delle modernità liquida, della società liquida, delle relazioni liquide, dove l'unica preoccupazione doveva essere quella di non affondare, ci vuole fegato per fondare qualcosa. Da dove viene così tanto coraggio? Dalla consapevolezza che quando i tempi si fanno duri bisogna essere capaci di osare di più. Inclusione è la parola chiave di questa iniziativa e della Nuova Global Foundation. È evidente la trasformazione che il significato di questo valore ha subito negli ultimi decenni. Fino a qualche anno fa, includere era una sollecitazione morale, considerata positiva nella misura in cui riduceva le emarginazioni sociali. Inclusione era l'idea che stava dietro a molti progetti educativi, indirizzati al superamento delle discriminazioni di ogni tipo. In un'epoca segnata dalle differenze di classe, inclusione era la via per portare i più umili a godere degli stessi benefici sociali ed economici delle classi agiate. In altre parole, inclusione era il modo per portare sullo scenario della società chi non riusciva a farcela con le proprie forze. Oggi questo significato di inclusione, importante sempre, non è il più decisivo. L'inclusione non è più una possibilità data a qualcuno, ma una necessità che riguarda tutti. Lo sperimentiamo quotidianamente che la realtà è plurale e interconnessa, che il principio di interdipendenza planetaria mostra la validità della condizione contrassegnata dal principio per cui tutto ciò che accade in qualsiasi angolo del mondo può avere una ripercussione in qualsiasi altro luogo del pianeta. Le scienze naturali avevano scoperto questo principio da tempo, da quando nel lontano 1962 Edward Lorenz coniò il famoso proverbio per cui, cito, il minimo battito di una farfalla in Brasile può provocare un uragano in Texas, e lo collocò a fondamento suggestivo della nascente teoria del caos. Oggi abbiamo scoperto che gli uragani non sono né la prima cosa né l'unica cosa di cui aver paura. Abbiamo toccato con mano che un virus uscito da chissà dove sta producendo morti, malati e limitazioni sociali ovunque. Abbiamo visto come la deforestazione in una regione del pianeta porti danni incalcolabili negli equilibri ecologici planetari. Abbiamo sperimentato come una petroliera che perde il suo carico di combustibile in un angolo di qualche mare implica danni ambientali ingenti da tutt'altra parte. Abbiamo più volte fatto esperienze che la variazione di un indice finanziario, di una borsa dislocata lontano, può produrre licenziamenti in tutt'altra parte del mondo e così via. E se questa serie di eventi descrive la condizione dell'interdipendenza fra le zone del pianeta, essa si presenta in modo uguale, anche se proporzionalmente ridotto, all'interno di qualsiasi circoscritta comunità umana. Anche le nostre città, infatti, sono interessate dalla condizione multiculturale e multireligiosa. Anche nelle nostre città esistono quartieri poveri e ricchi, luoghi di aggregazione di determinate culture e spazi in cui cittadini di diverse tradizioni e di eterogenee visioni del mondo convivono e spesso a fatica. E allora anche nelle nostre comunità umane si vive l'interdipendenza. Una risposta possibile a questa condizione è quella di chiudersi nel fortino delle proprie sicurezze, trovarsi solo con i simili a sé e innalzare argini, erigere mura, impedire che si valichi il confine e ci si incontri. Una tentazione presente e conosciuta in chi ha paura dell'incontro multiculturale e vuole risolvere le sfide dell'interdipendenza negandola. Ma tale tentazione non è quella maggioritaria. Non esiste argine, muro, confine che possa impedire all'umanità di riconoscersi come un soggetto compaginato da un unico destino. Quante volte, soprattutto negli ultimi anni, abbiamo ascoltato moniti del tipo «nessuno si salva da solo», «siamo tutti sulla stessa barca», «nessuno è un'isola», eccetera. È evidente, lo stiamo imparando a caro prezzo, che non si può vivere felici quando attorno a noi sono seminate sofferenza e disperazione. Se il mio destino è inserito nel destino di tutti, se la mia felicità dipende dalla felicità altrui, allora essa dipenderà soprattutto da chi non ne ha. La logica conseguenza è che senza un atteggiamento inclusivo, senza una programmata e competente inclusività, non si va da nessuna parte. Paradossalmente, siamo in un momento propizio per sognare ed elaborare un progetto di società che le tradizioni culturali, dallo al cristianesimo, dal giusnaturalismo all'illuminismo di stampo kantiano, per parlare solo di Occidente, hanno sempre propugnato, ognuno con le proprie categorie, e cioè quello che oggi viene definito come un cosmopolitismo radicato e cordiale, che potrebbe avere le seguenti premesse concettuali. Un noi inclusivo riluttante alla polarizzazione, una amicizia civica e sociale, una economia liberal sociale inclusiva. Si dice l'impresa del futuro sarà sociale o non sarà. Un giornalismo etico al servizio di società aperte, una cittadinanza sociale cosmopolita, una governance globale tradotta in una sorta di Stato cosmopolita democratico. Ho raccolto questa frase che mi è piaciuta molto. Un progetto politico di democrazia politica che globalizzi la democrazia e democratizzi la globalizzazione. Una nuova alleanza tra tecnoscienze e umanidades, studi umanistici. Tutto questo fondato sul rispetto dell'identità dei popoli e soprattutto su una etica cosmopolita, che significa una etica dialogica della ragione cordiale, una etica dell'intersoggettività non formale ma ancorata nei principi dell'ospitalità e la compassione, e in una coscienza morale transnazionale e globale che presti attenzione in modo particolare ai poveri e agli esclusi, che faccia i conti con la vulnerabilità umana e che venga sorretta da un'educazione etica improntata alla dignità del creato e delle persone. È un'utopia? Un lungo elenco di studiosi la sostiene da tempo. E non voglio elencarli qui ma anche il lavoro instancabile delle migliori ONG al servizio dello sviluppo integrale e delle istituzioni internazionali, al di là dei suoi limiti evidenti. Credo che favorire la realizzazione di simile progetto debba far parte della mission costitutiva della Nuova Global Foundation. Stanare gli ultimi e includerli nello spazio pubblico, snidare le condizioni più nascoste e inserirle nella rappresentazione degli interessi, scovare gli invisibili e portarli al centro della deliberazione politica. Questi sono processi che qualificano anche l'umanesimo lanciato da Papa Francesco, dal Patriarca Bartolomeo, dall'Imam di Al-Azhar e di altri leader religiosi. E come non ricordare The Economy of Francesco e il Global Compact on Education, ai quali il movimento di Focolare ha contribuito fin dalla loro origine. Vorrei concludere questo mio intervento con l'auspicio che oggi sia stato messo in moto un processo nuovo, di lungo respiro, capace di incontrare le domande di senso di un'umanità a volte disorientata e smarrita nei molteplici rivoli della frammentazione sociale. Una tappa importante verso un mondo più unito, un tassello significativo di quel mosaico che raffigura l'unica famiglia umana. Non mancano ragioni per la speranza. Come afferma la filosofa morale spagnola Adela Cortina, elaborare una no narrativa, una narrativa intelligente, una narrativa comune si fa sempre più difficile, ma è più che mai necessario. Le sfide globali, climatiche, pandemiche, digitali e dell'immigrazione e della povertà richiedono risposte cosmopolite. Grazie mille.
Thank you, Jesus, for framing the entire conference in such a meaningful and insightful way. I think we all would like to read again and think through what you just shared now with us. With this, dear friends, we come to the closing of our conference. We heard about the launch of Nuova Global Foundation. We learned about the first results of its pilot project on inclusive economy. We heard a lot of authentic, deep, factual, and insightful sharings offered by our heroes of inclusion, human development, and of a new ecological economy. You learned about the purpose of the Nuova Global Foundation, which is shaping a world of unity and peace through presenting instruments, ideas, and scientific insights for leaders and change makers that promote the common good. You understood our social impact goal, which is, in a cynical and divided world, we seek to present scientific proof that a united world is not only essential, it is viable and doable. For this, we seek friends, partners who believe and want to support the same. For this, we seek funds, grants, and donations from those who believe in us and whom we could persuade that we can make a difference. So what do we want to achieve this year, the year of 2022? We definitely want to consolidate and develop the Nuova Global Foundation. We want to support the network of affiliates. We want to continue in the inclusive economy project, especially by developing a global toolkit and measurement framework with the idea of the United World Score. This would allow companies worldwide to redesign their organizations to generate social impact and reduce inequalities, whilst remaining profitable businesses. We want to launch it, test it, and refine it. Then we want to promote the Unity Mark as a global award program for the enterprises, media companies, individuals who demonstrate that their work and contents contribute to building a better and more united world. We want to start a second project with and for Africa, featuring it as the continent of innovations. And we want to organize the second Unity Conference in 2022. To do this, we set the goal of raising in the first half of 2022 $1 million through fundraising and grant support. Of course, we cannot achieve this without you. Well, we built the strategy, the method. We are growing the global network. So please continue to journey with us. Tell others about this. And if you know anyone who likes to invest in media for a united world, let us know. Let us shape a united world together. Thanks to everyone for being with us today. Good day, good evening, to all of you.